The ground on which they took their stand was, "Cursed is everyone who continueth not in all things written in the book of the law to do them." There's a good place to stand, brothers. Stand there. Cursed is everyone who does not obey the law perfectly. Cursed is that one. Now you got to have a solution. And it will not be in law keeping. Hence, he goes on, hence they inferred the impossibility of the sinner being justified in any other way than for the sake of him who was made a curse for them. And hence, it clearly follows that whatever holiness any sinner may possess before, in, or after believing, it is of no account whatever as a ground of acceptance with God. Which means that God justifies us under the consideration of our unworthiness, our ungodliness, because of Christ, not under the consideration of our holiness, whatever it is and whenever it is. In this way, Fuller is able to retain the crucial biblical meaning of faith as a holy acting of the soul, an outflowing of regeneration, and yet say with Paul, to the one who does not work, but believes in him who justifies the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness. So the sum of the matter is that Fuller had one enemy, namely global unbelief in Jesus Christ. India, unbelief was the issue. Unbelief in China, unbelief in the New Hebrides, unbelief in Pakistan. This was the great enemy. And he saw that the victory was in the gospel and in people so wrought upon with vital faith that they were willing to lay down their lives to take it everywhere. And therefore, there were obstacles to the victorious gospel. Sandemanianism, stripping the soul of its life and vitality and joy, and Hyper-Calvinism, stripping the gospel of its universal applicability and its obligation to be spoken to all people. The Spirit and the bride say, "Come." The bride says, "Come." And let the one who hears say, "Come." And let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who desires to take the water of life without price come. So what shall we learn in conclusion? Just a few closing applications. What shall we learn from this man and his ministry? We should learn the vital link between the doctrinal faithfulness of the church and the cause of world missions. The main impulse today is all in the other direction. Everywhere you turn today is pressure not to dispute about doctrinal matters, because you're going to wreck missions if you do. How many times has it been said, would you stop raising those questions and be about mission? Now that statement, at best, is historically naive, and at worst is a cloak for uninhibited error spreading. So I long for you and me in our day to stop wasting our lives and to give ourselves to global missions. In whatever way in your church you see it hindered, it won't be the same. You're not going to go on a crusade against Sandemanianism. What will you do, though? What will you do to get out of the way the hindrances of your people to be engaged in missions? I don't care how far out in the boondocks in America you live and how far away from an ocean or a people, amazingly, they have come home to us on the internet in almost every other way. One crucial lesson we should learn from Andrew Fuller's life is that exegetical and doctrinal defense of justifying faith and gospel preaching did not hinder, but advanced great missionary enterprises. And the experience of the soul and the right thinking about the gospel unleashed a great world missionary movement. Here's another thing. Beware of the deadly mistake of drawing wrong inferences from texts based on superficial claims of logic. If God justifies the ungodly, then faith must be ungodly. If the natural man cannot receive the message of the cross, don't urge him to receive it. It would be pointless and cruel. Real logic is not the enemy of exegesis. But more errors than we know flow from the claim of logic to contradict the Bible. Here are a few. If God is love, there cannot be predestination. If Stephen says Israel has resisted God, then God cannot overcome rebellion irresistibly. If men are accountable for their choices, they must be ultimately self-determining. If God is good, innocent people wouldn't suffer so much. If God rules all things, including sin, He must be a sinner. If God rules all things, there's no point in praying. If God threatens a person with not entering the kingdom, he can't have eternal security. If Christ died for all, He cannot have purchased anything particular for the elect. And on and on and on, false logic draws inferences that the Bible doesn't draw. I get so tired. Actually, I don't hear it as much anymore, so I'm not as tired as I used to be. I used to get so tired of people saying that Calvinism is logic-driven rather than exegetical. My whole life proves the opposite. I just can't believe when Arminians say that. I was like, excuse me, now why is it that you believe you must have free will in order to be accountable? Why is that? Never do they quote you a verse. Zero. Never. If you believe there's a verse that teaches that, you come tell me. I'll never say this again if there's one there. I mean, you may tell me and there's not one there. Never, ever, ever does an Arminian say, well, the reason I believe that in order to be responsible you have to have free will is because it says so here. The reason is logic. Arminianism is born of carnal logic. It isn't true. And if we were more biblical, if we were saturated by the Bible, I read these things, where I'm taken to task by people who are writing, well, I'm not a Calvinist and all that stuff. Give me a verse, I want a verse, give me a verse. And it says, well, He's love. And so that can't be true. Well, how do you know? How do you know what love and God does? The Bible has to tell you the way God's love works. I'm done. I've got 2 paragraphs to go. There is a kind of inner logic to Fuller's life and battles and global fruitfulness. And here it is. Kind of inner logic to his life and effect. His engagement with Sandemanianism highlights the importance of vital, authentic, spiritual experience over against sterile, intellectualistic faith. That's one piece. His engagement with Hyper-Calvinism highlights the importance of objective gospel truth. That's another piece. So, authentic biblical experience, vitality, and getting the gospel and its display right. That's objectives. You know, I got